gonna swim, bike, and run. In the corner sun, we're gonna swim, bike, and run. In the corner sun, 2021.
Thank you, Poncho Man. Welcome everybody back to Breakfast with Bob, Not Quite Kona edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We are brought to you by Hookta One One, by Master Spas, Clash USA, UCAN, Hyper Ice Premium Plus Travel, Forum Goggles, and of course our Challenge Athletes Foundation. During COVID, we sent out 3,038 grants, totaling $5.1 million to keep challenge athletes in the game of life through sport. Our next guest, Ellie Salthouse, has been on a huge roll through 2021, and she joins us from her palatial estate somewhere hidden in Colorado. Ellie, how you doing?
Hi, Bob. I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting. It's been a while.
It's funny. I remember, I think the last time we chatted was in Nice, right before the race at the 70.3 Worlds. You had been there for 6 weeks. You were all excited about the race, and it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out. But the rest of the season, you've been on fire basically since then. Talk about what happened at Nice first, and then we'll get into all the good stuff.
Yeah, I guess Nice was probably my biggest disappointment so far, actually. I had a mechanical on the bike. I was right with the front group, right where I needed to be. And unfortunately, it was just something that was totally out of my control. And yeah, I was really unfortunate. It didn't finish my day. I mean, I kept riding on a fixed gear to finish the rest of the way. But I mean, that course is no match for a fixed gear. So
no.
Yeah, it was a very disappointing way to I guess, finish up my Worlds campaign. But yeah, I went on to race a couple more races at the end of 2019. And then, I mean, last year was what it was.
Right.
And then back this year, yeah, having probably one of my best years to date. So yeah, it's been an incredible year so far.
Well, you think about it. So with this Hell of the West, you win that, Australian Long Course Championships, Geelong 70.3, Challenge Shepparton, Challenge 70.3 Andorra. You've been on a huge roll. And so is the goal now, you got Collins Cup and then 70.3 St. George? Is that something you go for as well?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Those two races are the big goals for the rest of the year. Yeah, I've come over to Boulder, Colorado. I've been here a couple of weeks now. So I'm in my big Worlds block, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully qualifying for Collins Cup, and then yeah, the big push to 70.3 Worlds in St. George.
So for Collins Cup, what do you have to do at this point? Because you've won pretty much everything the last years. What do you have to do to firm up a spot?
Well, nothing now. I'm not racing again before the qualifying period finishes. So I guess it's up to the selectors now. I'm sitting in sixth, so just outside of the automatic qualification slots. So I guess my hope now is that I can get a captain's pick spot. So there's two of those. And yeah, I guess I've shown my colors this year, and hopefully that's enough to be able to get the captain's pick.
So when 2020 shut the whole world down, here you are coming off this phenomenal 2019, probably really hungry to go back to 70.3 Worlds and show, hey, I had a mechanical last time. How tough was that period of time for you in 2020, not being able to race?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really tough for everybody in different ways. But for me, it was actually great because it gave me an opportunity to really work on my weaknesses. And once everything started to get canceled, I kind of wrote off Worlds and I wrote off the rest of the season because I didn't think it would be going ahead. So yeah, it gave me an opportunity to really step back and train for the love of training and do all the things that I wouldn't normally get the opportunity to do. And I guess it gave me a great chance to put in a huge base block, which is paying off now in 2021.
So what I love is that you got into the sport so young. People look at you now and you're a young woman, but you got into this when you were 11 years old. And what you were just seeing an ad on the back of a cereal box for the Weet-Bix Kids Try.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like a bit of a veteran of the sport, and I'm only 28.
I know. I've been doing this thing over 15 years.
I know. I've been in here a long time. But yes, I did. I saw an ad on the back of a cereal box when I was 11, and I asked my parents to sign me up for the local Kids Triathlon. And I loved it so much that after that, I asked them to sign me up for the local Kids Try Club. And yeah, I started training down there with a bunch of kids, and I fell in love with the sport, and the rest is history, I guess.
So you turned pro at 17 while you were in high school.
Yes.
And basically in 2010, when you graduated high school, you went pro full time. And the goal at that point was the Olympics?
Well, I had just qualified for the Youth Olympics actually in 2010. So I was in grade 12 in high school. And yeah, I took out my pro card to be able to travel internationally. As part of Triathlon Australia pro license, we also have international insurance, which is great. So I took that out, which meant that I was then a professional athlete, still finishing high school. So yeah, I finished 2010, and then 2011 went straight into the pro ranks. And yeah, I was racing the ITU junior races and living half of the year in Australia, half of the year in Spain. And yeah, I mean, it was very young to be turning professional, but yeah, I feel very lucky for that.
What did your parents think of that? It's like letting your daughter go off and travel the world at such a young age.
I mean, I think they were probably a bit scared, but they knew I was in good hands. My coach was traveling with me. I was in the Australian training base at the time. So they knew I wasn't going to be alone on the other side of the world. So they didn't let their fear show. So they were pretty encouraging and very proud of me to be heading off and chasing a dream.
So in 2010, you get a silver at the Youth Olympic Games in Singapore.
Yeah.
And when you do that, when you're one step away from winning that, you realize that, okay, the Olympics are reality, right? There's something that you can get to. And from 2010, 2013, you're doing Continental Cups, World Cups, Junior World Champs, French Grand Prix. Talk a bit about the French Grand Prix. I don't think enough people know how intense that racing is and how important that is.
Yeah, well, it's a really cool format because it's actually a team event, and they have a bunch of different races which range from the sprint distance, and then they have shorter, sharper team events. So the opening race of my French Grand Prix debut, I guess you could call it, was a teams event. So you start with 5 athletes, and we all race over the sprint distance, but you only are as good as your third best athlete. So only 3 count for points. So basically it's really strategic, and you have to try and get that third athlete across the line as quickly as possible so you can get, I guess, the fastest time for the team. So yeah, it's a really cool event, but really intense. You race pretty well every second weekend across the European summer. And yeah, you're traveling all around France, and you basically live with your teammates. And yeah, it's a really cool atmosphere, and it makes it a nice team environment rather than an individual sport.
So was the goal 2012 to go to London and race for Australia?
I think the goal was 2016, actually. I think 2012, probably a little bit too early in the picture. But yeah, 2016 was definitely the goal.
But 2013, you retired. You're basically, I'm done. Were you getting frustrated with the fact that the whole draft legal? Was it just feeling like, okay, what's next for me? What led to that? Because you were so young to be retiring.
Yeah, exactly right. So I was just, I had a string of injuries, and I was just getting really frustrated with the fact that I was putting in all this hard work and training, and I just wasn't getting the rewards on race day. So yeah, I just started to get really frustrated, and I wasn't getting any return for the investment. And it was just becoming one of those things that it felt like a bit more of a chore than, I fell out of love with the sport, I think. And I think that was the biggest thing. I felt like I was racing for everybody else and not for myself anymore. And I knew that if I was going to have a future in triathlon, that I essentially needed to step back and reassess where I was at. So that's exactly what I did. I came back from Spain, where I was living at the time, and came back to Australia. And yeah, I just pursued other avenues. I got my personal training certificates. I started studying. So yeah, I really didn't know where I was going with it. I didn't know if I was going to go back to triathlon. I knew that I had unfinished business in the triathlon arena, but I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to pursue that as a career again, or whether I wanted to do something else and then stay with triathlon as a hobby. So I really had to work out what I wanted and where my passion lied.
When you mentioned passion, and nobody's more passionate than Siri Lindley.
Yeah.
And there was a point where Siri Lindley came into your life, and you got back into the sport. Was Siri a big motivator for you deciding, you know what, I think I have more to do here?
100%. Yeah. So when I decided to come back to the sport at the end of the beginning of 2014, actually, I contacted her best friend, Loretta Harrop, who was my mentor and inspiration growing up. She's a silver medalist from Athens in 2004, and I idolized her growing up. So I contacted her and asked if she'd like to coach me, and I wanted to come back to triathlon. I wasn't sure in what capacity, but I needed a good coach. And she, at the time, had just had her second child. So her priorities obviously weren't lying with coaching athletes. But so she put me in contact with Siri. And basically a week later, Siri was coming out to Australia for a training camp with her athletes. And we met up, and I instantly knew that I had to go back to triathlon, and I had all these lofty goals already. And yeah, Siri was so encouraging, and I knew she was the person that was going to help me achieve all my goals and dreams in triathlon.
And Siri's obviously known for coaching longer distance athletes, Marina Carfrae and athletes like that. But she was your coach as you were trying to head to Rio, correct?
Yeah, so she was my coach with ITU from 2014 to 2016. And yeah, we had a couple of ITU athletes as well, a couple others. We had one from Chile, a few from Australia. We had Paula Finley, who was still racing ITU at the time. So we actually had a really good little squad of ITU athletes at that time. But yes, she was more renowned for the long course athletes. And so we had a great mix in the squad, actually.
When did you realize it was time to move to a longer distance?
Yeah, the end of 2015, I got to another crossroad, and I said to Siri, we actually sat down. This time we were in Noosa on another training camp in Australia. And I said to her, look, I'm really not enjoying this anymore. I'm at the same point I was a couple of years ago. I need to figure out what I want, where I want to go, whether I want to do triathlon or something different. And she actually encouraged me at the time to race a half distance race. And that was something I said, absolutely no. I'm not racing a half distance. That's crazy. That's way too long. This race is double what I'm used to. That's really crazy. So I actually went to Canada. I went to Penticton. I raced the challenge race there at the end of 2015 and hated every second of it. And it was so beautiful, but it was so painful. And I hadn't done any training for the half distance. So I was still on the ITU program, and I was jumping in this half distance race against some of the best in the world. And yeah, I really didn't enjoy any of that. And I actually finished and couldn't walk for 3 days after because I was so sore. So then Siri and I sat down, and I said, look, that's something I really didn't enjoy that. I don't want to do that again. And she said, okay, how about we train for the half distance? You give 2016 a really good shot at the half distance, kind of use it as like a probation year, see how it goes. If you like it at the end of 2016, you can stay, you can, you have a career in the half distance. If not, go and do whatever dreams you want to chase, go and chase them. So that's exactly what we did. And then 2016, I ended up winning 5 half distance races. And yeah, it was an incredible
year. In the world.
Yeah, it was a bit of a stamp my name on the distance. And of course, when you're winning, and I guess when you're training for that distance, it's a lot more enjoyable.
So you're still so young in this sport. You've been around for a long time, but you're so young. Do you see yourself? You're sort of at a good era because you can focus 70.3 and not have to feel like, okay, I have to go do a full at some point. Do you want to do a full, or are you happy at this? Because this is double what you were doing before. This is still a long way. Are you happy at this distance, and this is where you want to stay?
Yeah, I mean, I love the half distance. I love the training for it. And I love the fact that I can race so often. So I can usually race about 8 times a year. So
yes.
Yeah, this is a distance that I feel like is perfect. It's still got the speed that I really enjoy and really carry from the ITU distance. But it's got the endurance that obviously my body kind of is suited better towards. So I'm really happy racing the half distance, but I'm not going to say never for the full distance, which is what I have previously always said. But maybe one day. But while I still have the speed and while I'm still really enjoying the half distance, I'm going to stay here.
And with St. George, have you been on that course? Have you raced there before?
Yeah, I've actually raced there twice before. So it was one of my first half distance races in 2016 that I raced St. George, and then I went back again in 2018.
And what do you think? Does the course suit you?
Yeah, very much so. I love climbing. I love descending. So we've got a lot of that in the St. George course. So I think it's a perfectly suited course for me. It's always really hot there as well. I'm hoping September will be the same. I haven't been there in September, but I have heard that it's typically quite warm. So that's definitely suited to me as well.
Will you spend a training block in St. George like you did in Nice, or will you primarily just stay in Boulder?
Yeah, I'll just stay in Boulder this year, primarily for the altitude and also because it's only 10 hours drive. So I'm looking at going in on race week, probably the Monday. So 5 or 6 days out from the race, just to, obviously get used to things and do some media and that kind of thing. But I don't think I'll go in too far ahead of the race.
So when you look back at your career, and it's funny, somebody 28 thinking about somebody who's been racing since she's 11, what do you look at as your best race?
To be honest, I kind of look at my career in two parts. I see the ITU side of things, and obviously I'm most proud of the 2 silver Youth Olympic medals that I won in 2010, and that was a huge career highlight for me, even to this day. But I think moving towards the half distance 70.3 career that I'm currently in, obviously I'm so proud of all the wins that I've been able to get to date. I mean, I don't take any win for granted because they're so few and far between, but I'm always most proud of the home ground wins. So the Boulder wins where I spend my summers and, those Mooloolaba racing there and those kinds of things, because it's in front of the most important people that I hold dearly. So, yeah, I think, and also this year, I think my Australian long course title is probably up there with one of those races that I will hold dearly for a long time.
Well, and that, like you said, the ones at home are really important. And this year, because of COVID, you raced a ton at home. And so you got to race in front of the home fans a lot. Yeah,
I got to race 4 times in Australia this year, which is more than I ever have previously.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to have my family at all of those races, which was amazing because obviously they don't get to see me race that often as well. So for them, it's a thrill. For me, it's a thrill. And then to be able to win in front of them is even better. So I was very lucky this year.
What would it mean to you to win 70.3 Worlds?
Oh, it would be an absolute dream come true. It's making me tear up thinking about it, but I think it's definitely possible this year. It would mean everything to me. I've worked basically the last 17 years of my life to this point, whether it be this year or another year, but I'm going to give it everything I have. I know that I'm capable of that. And it would really just basically cement to me that, all the hard work that I'm putting in to this sport and to this career is paying off. And I honestly think that I can be one of the greatest in the world. I just would love to be able to show that in St. George.
So the Collins Cup, this is going to be a first time event, and it's, the internationals, which means you guys are teaming up with the Canadians, right? And then you've got the Europeans and you got the Americans. It's something none of us have ever seen, right? This is a brand new thing. What are your expectations for this, and are you excited about it?
Yeah, this is going to be an incredible race, an incredible format, and something we've never seen before. So I think it's like an injection of excitement into the sport. And, I think it's going to bring a lot of fans that have probably never been fans of triathlon before just because of this format and the fact that it's a team event. So people have a team to get behind, there's going to be that rivalry and, the team's component that people want to be able to get behind. So, to be a part of the inaugural Collins Cup would be incredible. I am looking forward to also having teammates for, the first time. We've never experienced a race where we essentially have another 5 teammates. So It's also going to be a bit strange racing only 2 other people. So
yes, right. That's going to be really unique. Yeah.
Only 3 women on the start line every 10 minutes. So it's a really unique format, and I really hope I can be a part of it.
I love it. Hey, Ellie, as always, it's such a pleasure to get to chat with you. And I love what you bring to the game, being involved since you're 11 years old. And I bet you when you're watching the Olympics, there's a number of women who you've raced against.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting. Some of them are actually friends of mine now. So watching them is a huge thrill for me. And I love getting behind them, especially the Aussies. So the women are racing today. So I'm really excited to get behind them and cheer them on. And hope they can produce something very special.
Love it. Ellie, thank you so much for taking time. Always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Thanks, Bob. Love chatting with you.
Ellie Salthouse has been our guest, everybody. Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. We'll catch you next time. See ya.